Welcome back to Archean, episode 10 of the Cargo Challenge. And we see the sun is setting. Alright, so in the previous episode, we constructed our quote-unquote catamaran. And we're going to try to drive it into the water here and lower the props and get moving. I'm going to disable the acceleration reduction. Get a little speed to get in the water there. And we're in the water. Alright, now we're going to manually lower the props. Notice the minimum position is negative on this one and the other one is positive. Somehow I got them inverted. I didn't think about that when I installed them. So something to check for in the future when installing multiple tracks that's supposed to kind of match. Make sure that the min-max positions match. So if I do negative here, doesn't work. And then put positive, and it goes down. And they're mostly in the water. So the track should have been a little longer. Yeah, if I didn't mess around with that submarine stuff, I'd be motoring along. Alright, so I'm going to get a copy of the vehicle code. I'm going to swap out this drive. And it's rebooting back to the default configuration with no drive in it. And where's that hard drive I have? There it is. It's actually possible to drag it directly from the inventory over there. I did not need to put it in my toolbar. And create a new file. This overrides the default. We paste it in the vehicle code, and we're going to go through here and if I can spell boat. Apparently I can't spell boat. There's a very creative description. I need to add some definitions for the propeller and the pivot. I think the pivot only has one channel. So the get speed is to get the rotation speed. I don't actually use that. It's doing it for completeness. We can set the speed and we can set the pitch. We don't actually mess with the pitch currently. And we'll do one for the small pivot. So SP prefix for small pivot. So you set the angle and that's called good enough. Okay, so we don't need wheelie logic, I hope, for our boat. I guess you could put wheelie if you put, what is it? It's a density sensor. And I think it's a density sensor. It returns the environmental percentage. And so if you're in the water, it'd be 100% H2O. And if you're like in the air, it'd be like 2% H2O. So if I put those sensors underneath from the pontoons, and if they lift it out of the water, then I could detect that and then dampen the engines down. So I could put anti-wheelie position detection on a boat. Maybe not right at the tip. Maybe put like, you know, you want some ride, so maybe put it back, you know, maybe a quarter way back or so, or third way back. I don't actually do that, but I'm just thinking you could put that in there. Unfortunately, this boat does not go that fast. Now the steering from the seat is, you know, -1 to 1, which is a lot, which will cause the pivot to spin all the way around. So you have to dampen that, and we're moving forward. I got the steering backwards. I was just testing out the steering, see which way it goes. And you can look at the props moving. I don't have any aileron. I guess I could put an aileron on the end of the props to move with the whole unit. I guess that would help the steering a bit. I figure they're far enough apart that it provides enough steering. All right, so what I'm doing right now, I'm sort of holding down the W key and hitting the D key a lot. It definitely has a serious pull to the left, probably because the boat is not balanced. It's, you know, obviously the left seems to be dipping in further than the right. I think it's because I couldn't center the track that lifted the container. It's off by 1, and that maybe, the container itself probably not balanced either. I don't deal with the balance in this episode. Let's see. I'm getting tired of holding down the W key, so I'm just going to hard code acceleration. Now you could put this on a toggle switch, and then toggle on, toggle off. But this is sort of a hack project. All right, so we got, at least that's one less key I got to worry about, but it definitely has that serious pull going on here. And the front's just flat, and so I probably should curve that out. I assume that would help a little bit. This is sort of the grand experiment. So obviously I need a auto steer on this boat to maintain a heading. Now the nav unit, nav component, it requires 100 gold to build. Seems a bit excessive. And as we saw from my initial attempt to look for gold, I don't have any. And now the advantage of the nav unit, you get lat long coordinates and a lot more information, and you can use that for navigating and maintaining control. Now, one thing I did do before I left is I did set up if you look at the very first episode, I did put a beacon up and called it start_base. And that beacon's running, and since that has geothermic power, it'll be perfectly powered up during the night. So what I can do is put a beacon on the ship here and use the other beacon sort of to lock into. So, and then that will gives me at least a line from the other beacon to be able to maintain a direction. I didn't turn my side lights on. Something else I noticed that when it gets a bit darker, your suit light will kind of flood everything out so you can't see the distance, which is actually realistic. So notice how the boat's sort of moving around. The speed is zipping along. Now that speed is, I guess, all 3 dimensions, so maybe it's the speed of it bobbing in the water there. But there is a sort of a currents or randomness in the water. Okay, so I'm going to create another beacon here, and I'm not going to do something fancy, so I'm just going to do something simple. So the beacon gives you an XYZ, and an X being your horizontal, the Y is vertical, and the Z is depth. And so if the Z is negative, that means the beacon's ahead of you. If it's positive, it's behind you. So basically just using X and Z, you can get a 360 direction to the other beacon. And orientation of this matters because I want it pointed to the front of the boat. And it will connect that. Now, interesting that the base beacon, it just has blank for transmit data, so you can obviously transmit blank. So now we have a track, and because we're sort of bouncing around, you can see the Y coordinate was sort of moving around. And I'll let that lock it down a little bit. Figure I put a toggle switch to so what I think about doing here is once I get in the direction I want to go into, I turn the toggle switch on, and that sort of locks in the steering, kind of enables autopilot, auto steering should we say. And if I turn it off, then it disables it. Now, mistake I make in this video, which I realized afterwards, is I should have, when you turn the autopilot on, it should also turn the engine on full bore. I don't realize that until after the video. Oh, I'm going to fix that, annoying all those precision points after the speed. Get a little more reasonable there. This thing really rocks in the water here. So what I'm going to do here, sort of expected, I'll create constants for the beacon and the, I don't know what to call this. Call it the autopilot or pilot switch. Let's get verbose. So in this case, I'm not going to get said real fancy. The beacon returns XYZ. You can convert that. You can convert the X into back to radians, and then from there you convert them to degrees. And if you factor in the Z value, you can figure out the quadrant, and from there you can give yourself a 0 to 360 degrees, and you can orientate whether you want the front of the boat to be 0 degrees or to the right to be 0 and forward be 90, and you can do all that work. I don't bother doing all that. I just need a relative value because I'm just taking the current value and the expected or the target value, desired value, and just subtract them and do the calculations from there. So you will see the. I'm not going to build a pig controller. I'm just going to do a P, very bad P controller. Okay, so the X, only thing I'm going to use is the X. I'm not even going to worry about the Z, because I kind of know I'm pointing in the general direction, so I know I'm not inverted. Also, I could, maybe I'll do next episode is compute distance. And so with those values, I can compute how far away I'm in from the beacon. So the value should increase. That'd be interesting to see how far from the original beacon I am. And should be able to map that to kilometers. And as I move away, you can see that now I can look at the cargo on the end of the video, and I'll look at the side of the cargo, and it tells me how far I went, and it's not a lot. All right, so this is direction. It's basically the direction X value. And the goal is I can see what direction I'm actually going, and then what's the desired direction, so I can see how they track. So I'll get the... Oh, and I make a lot of typos and spelling and other weird stuff in here. So I do go back and correct it. So if you watching me code and going, and no, I'm not on medication. I'm not on drugs, just to point that out. So if you see any oopsies, I do go back and at least the editor is close enough when you hit Control S to find the errors, and it's pretty obvious with my typos and whatnot. And so the basic logic will be, I'll have, and you have two globals. One is, am I in auto steer or not? And what is the goal direction, the desired direction I want to track? And so what happens by default is the steering, auto steering is off. You turn it on, and if it knows the toggle's on and auto steering is off, then it will turn on auto steering and it saves the current direction. So basically, when you flip the switch, the current direction you're pointing at is where you're going to go. Once it has that, so now we know where we want to go, and we know it's turned on. So at that point, if we're turned on, we use the desired location and the current direction. This is all relative. We subtract them, gives an error. We apply our K value to that, and then we apply that to our steering. And we either add, subtract to the steering. I think I do add, and I fix it to subtract after that. So you apply that to the steering, and voila, we have a very crude P controller running. So I'll go through and type all that up, and then the one thing I say I don't do in this video is I leave the acceleration as I commented on and off. So I have to go in there in the code and turn it on, turn it off. And another problem with that is every time I do that, I don't use the program resets. So if it's running and I'm tracking, and I go in, and it just happens to be drifting away, and I go into code and make a change, and when it starts back up again, it snaps since the toggle switch is on, and the default is auto steering is off. It snaps the current direction and uses that for tracking purposes, and continues on. And I do a couple times before I kind of figure out what the heck's going on here. Now I could technically save that to quote unquote storage, and storage is literally a persistent file on drive, and thus when it starts up, it reloads that value. So if you want information to persist between program edits, you can put them in a storage variable and do that. It doesn't take that long if you only load it on the start, but I don't bother with that. Now normally when I code up for this game, I typically just put it in Notepad. I know there's a extension for Visual Studio Code. I just hate Visual Studio Code. I use Visual Studio, the full IDE. And so I just do it in Notepad, type it in, and the language is not that complicated that you should be able to type it in Notepad once you're familiar with it and not really have any errors. So I do it in Notepad, I double check it, then I can structure and create functions and think about it, and I can screw around for a rather long time. Just look at the code and play around with whatnot and organizing it, make it look pretty. I'm not doing that here. I purposely want to write the code while, during the video live, so you can see the process of debugging and what my thought processes are and why I'm doing certain things, and just typing the code out. I think there's value of coding like this, it's sort of enforces the language when you have to sit there and sort of time crunch, because I don't want to take too long writing this code. I want to do it quickly, so I don't make it too boring. And I think if you're not familiar with the language or you're new to coding, this might be useful. Now, I don't use the block style coding because I personally don't care for them. I've coded this way for a very long time, and so I'm just used to it. I'm trying to think of what to do. And I have direction equal, which is an error, and I will fix that. I think the editor catches that. In some languages, that's actually a valid statement, and you can miss it. One of those common errors people make. I think there's possible warning, but yeah, you can do multiple assignments like that with variables in other languages. That's another fun thing too, is I'll occasionally might put a semicolon at the end of a line. I normally would code in C++ or C# occasionally. So mixing up my languages. A little bit of system Verilog at one point. And here I am. I just picked the direction. The steering goes either negative or positive, and I go, well, I'll just pick one, and if it turns the wrong way, then I'll just invert it to a negative. I figure I'll just do that, and I can always play with it. Made a K value kind of small for now, just one thing I can adjust that to a little bit if it's not tracking right. Okay, so and you can put a comment. This is the worst PID/P controller ever written. And a lot of this stuff you put in subroutine. As I said, if I was crafting this, I would be doing it a little bit differently. But then all of a sudden you just see me go blop, and a big chunk of code gets thrown in there, and it doesn't really help. And then I might skip over it, but it doesn't really explain what the heck I'm doing. Okay, so here I want to write the expected or the desired direction here, but I only want to render it if you're actually in auto steer mode. So that kind of gives you a double thing. I don't need a separate, saying auto steer on and off. I just display the message if it is, and then this extra line, and then you'll obviously know I'm in auto mode because I'll put auto there. And so a lot of little issues here I will fix up in the next video. So now on the balance problem. So the ship has a balance issue. And for that, what I can do is go ahead and put a track across the ship with a big chunk of weight on it, like concrete, since I don't have lead yet. See how the light lamp just kind of washes everything out? Playing around the steering to see if it's which way it's going. Now I could back up and look at the props turn, so I just look at the direction. If the direction's sort of going the direction I think it's going to go. Look at the code in. Okay, it says flop on. It's kind of hard to see that. If I move a little closer, I can barely see the prop. Okay, so go over there. Now I can lose track of where the heck I'm in. It dips sometimes. That's kind of weird. I think it's. Oh, I think I have the steering way off. I think I'm oversteering. It's a prop. What happened? I think I just put in too much steering in it and just rotating the props around. Should probably have the current direction of the pivots. I would be able to see that. You get really fancy, you could have animation 2D drawing of the prop direction, and then as they rotate, you rotate the drawing. And you can see how that operates. Okay, you see we're pulling a little too much going on. Okay, let's go fix some code up here. So we're going to do some adjustments. So one, I'm going to change the direction. I'll just change that value. Change the K. That's kind of what I change the K or change this. Probably better there. Okay, so let's see if we can. I'm going to go that way. Yeah, I'll go that way. So, okay, turn it over, do it manually, and then we'll flop the switch over and yeah, it's trying. It needs a little more oomph. Now here's the problem where I just make a change and I save it, then it changes it. I'm pointing in the wrong direction, so it starts tracking in the wrong direction when I make the change. So now it's tracking this direction. I don't want to go that way. I'm going, what? Why is it going this way now? I can override it with the key a little bit, but it comes back tracking the wrong way. And of course, doing all this at night makes it more fun. But that's the nature of this game. You're going to have, a lot of sunlight and a lot of darkness. So I have those two front lights, but I don't think they're going to add that much. I need to put more ship lights on here. It takes me a while to figure out what's going on here. I'm not realizing that every time I edit, it just resets the direction. And it's not a steering issue, it's the direction issue. Okay, so let's go, while I'm effing around with this, let's go back to steering balance. So like I've said, I could have a track going across there with a big block of concrete on it, and then I move it back and forth to balance out the ship. And I can use a tilt sensor to figure out what, where the center, when it's actually level. Now it's going to kind of roll a little bit, but you can't get an average. So basically you can compute an average center point from the rolling back and forth, and then move the weight around. And you move it side to side, and you could move it, backwards and forward to move the center mass. The other thing I could have done is I could have put additional tracks for holding the cargo, so I could actually shift the cargo left and right or front and back, and use that weight of the cargo to actually rebalance the ship. But until I do that, we're going to sit here and be lopsided. So this is a place where I should have. I keep turning the acceleration on and off, which makes the problem worse because then I keep resetting the direction. So what I decided to do here is I figured, well, let me add two push buttons. If I sort of push the button, left, it kind of like adjusts the steering a little bit, so I don't have to keep like turning it off, pointing it, turning it back on again. I can just sort of nudge it if I want to sort of steer a little bit. I don't want that hanging up like that. Now I probably should integrate with that steering. I don't need that. This is a mistake. What I'm getting to is that I'm in the seat. I can steer from the seat. So if I'm in autopilot mode, auto steering mode, and I manually hit, the A or D key, then I can use that as a nudge. Other words, when auto steer is on, AD becomes nudges to the desired direction. and thus I wouldn't need to put up these stupid buttons. And it's much easier to use the key than it is to use the push the button. The other thing I could do is I could override the T key, which is thrust. And if you hit the T, basically you could toggle the thrust, the acceleration of the thrust on and off. So basically, instead of coding it, is that if I hit T, then the thrust comes on. If I hit T again, it comes off. And so now I have better control. So I can use T to enable acceleration, leaving it on, since I'm not using T for anything else. And then I can use the steering mode for adjusting direction, and pick an auxiliary key like 1 to turn auto steer on and off. And then I don't need any buttons. I can do everything from the keyboard. As far as the whole learning process of doing all this. Here I am playing around with the factors in the steering. And so we can see where we're aiming at. We want to go that way. So what this episode, so what the rest of this episode is going to be is I'm just going to be motoring along, and I don't want to sit there. I'm going to run the rest of this at full speed. I think the interesting coding part's done, and just let me get past this little coding here. I kind of play with the numbers a little bit, with the adjustments. I think I boost the cable a little bit. That front dips in some. I got to work on that front a little bit. Okay, so the rest of this video is going to be running at 5x. So the raw video of this capture was a little over an hour, and most of it's just me putting along, and occasionally. So right now we're tracking. The auto steering is doing its thing, and for those who've watched PID videos, you see the it overcorrecting back and forth, which is when you just use the p-value. And next I need to use the d derivative to try to correct that a little bit. But we're not going to bother with that. So what happens the rest of this video, if you don't want to skip out, we'll zip along at 5x. And so we motor along for a while, and then I stop and see how much progress we're making, which is not much. And then of course, we're doing like average of 35 miles per hour, and we need to go 300 kilometers. So this is going to be like eight more hours of motoring, and the batteries are not going to last that long, which I discovered. So I get like here I'm trying to tune it up a little bit. So I get part way through, and then my one set of only running the props off one battery each, even though I have two batteries on each side. So I drain the one battery on each side, and then I rewire to use the other battery. And initially I rewire it only to propulsion. I leave the pivots on the original battery, and I lost steering partly. And I screw around with that, and I realize, okay, well, I need to, here I'm recabling the battery to power. I need to go through, and yeah, we're not making much distance here, only 15 kilometers out of 300. So then I realized that, the steering is not working because it didn't have any power to drive the steering. So then I rewired the steering to the other battery also. And you might say, well, but you designed your battery system like crap. Oh, yeah, okay, I got that. I should have just put them all together, put more batteries, routed them together, and not split the power like this. And that was kind of silly. And so I start motoring along, and so I've already said burn through one set of battery. I have one more left. I could probably make another set of batteries without too much trouble. Here I am trying to figure out why I don't have steering. And then I decided to rewire that and do all that messing around. Get 5x, this one's getting to all 5x. So what's going to happen is after some point I decide, well, obviously I need to pull in the shore so I can set up a geothermic unit. And here I am all spun around because I had the steering. Now the steering's working, so I see the props moving. I probably should put little big stick foot flags on them so they're real obvious and they turn. So I figured, okay, let me go down and a little further, but at some point I'm starting to kind of see that little tip at the end there on the right. I started aiming for that, and I figured that looks kind of flat. Let's go over there. And then at some point I started worrying, said, well, you know, I'm not getting that much closer. It's still a long way to the shore. So then I start angling it more to the shore and just kind of drive in that direction. And I don't actually, and after about an hour recording, well, it's about enough for this session. I was hoping to end this video with me at least next to the shore, but that's not going to happen. So I get as close as I'll get closer. And so the kind of goal of the next video is I'm going to have to make another set of batteries. It's get to the shore, then go ahead and build another mini base, get some, and there's no, obviously no solar on the catamaran's not going to do anything. So then get some geothermic units running for power and charge the batteries up. And while the batteries are charging, this will give me an opportunity to do some critical redesigns. One, I need to clean up the power system. Two, I need more propulsion. This is going too slow. Probably having flat tips in the pontoons is not helping, so I'm going to try to make it a little more pointy somehow. Make them a little higher, probably make the pontoon a little bigger so they get a little more flotation on them. Probably should try to adjust the center of gravity. I can do that manually by just placing concrete on one end of it. Let's try just so the cargo's the weight shouldn't change after I build, so I can just put some concrete on one side and try to level out the ship a little bit. And then once I get full set of batteries and I change the code a little bit, get rid of the buttons and use the keyboard better. So we'll clean it all up and then we'll charge up and then we'll go off again and see how far we get before we have to stop and charge. At some point, we'll hit sunlight and that will help. I'll put more solar panels on the unit so when we hit, well, I'll wait till we hit daylight for that. All right, so I guess I'll end this episode here of the great journey across the world. Till next time, see ya.